Hi Year 5, well, almost Year 6. I'm Mrs Codling, although you probably know that because we had each other for a little bit in Year 4. I am really looking forward to having you in Year 6, and I'm very sorry that we can't do our normal transition thing where we get to meet each other and do some fun activities, but I'm really looking forward to seeing you all in September. As you probably know, we are going to be in Juniper class, which is a class right next door to where you are at the moment, and I am standing in it, so you might be able to see a little bit of it behind me. So what all the teachers are doing instead is reading a little bit from their favourite book, or a book that we are going to be looking at next year. It's not my favourite, but I absolutely love it. It's Young Sherlock, Death Cloud. There's a series of these books, and as you probably know by now, or hopefully you do, that our first topic will be the Victorians, and this links to that. So I was just going to read you the prologue because I think it's really, really good and it hooks you right into the book. If you would like to read over the summer, I'm sure you can find it in the library, or if not, I have copies of this in our school library in our classroom. So, Death Cloud. This is the prologue here. The first time Matthew Arnott saw the cloud of death, it was floating out of the first floor window of a house near where he was living. He was scurrying along the high street in the market town of Farnham, looking for any fruit or crusts of bread that a careless passer-by might have dropped. His eyes should have been scanning the ground, but he kept looking up at the houses and the shops and at the thronging people all around him. He was only 14, and as far as he could remember, he'd never been in a town this large before. In this, the prosperous part of Farnham, the older wood-beamed buildings leaned over into the street, with their upper rooms looming like solid clouds above anybody underneath. The road was cobbled with smooth, fist-sized stones for part of its length, but some distance ahead the cobbles gave way to a packed earth from which clouds of dust rose up as the horses and cars clattered past. Every few yards sat a pile of horse manure, some fresh and steaming, surrounded by flies, some dry and old like strands of hay or grass that had been clumped together and somehow stuck. Matthew could smell the steamy, putrid dung, but he could also smell baking bread and what might have been a pig that had been roasted on a spit above a roaring fire. He could almost see the fat dripping off and sizzling in the flames. Hunger made his stomach clench, and he nearly doubled over with a sudden pain. It had been a few days since he'd had any proper food. He wasn't sure how much longer he could go on. One of the passers-by, a fat man in a brown bowler hat and a dark suit that was showing its age, stopped and extended a hand to Matthew as if to help him. Matthew backed away. He didn't want charity. Charity led to the workhouse or the church for a child with no family, and he didn't want to start out on a path towards either of those destinations. He was doing fine by himself. All he had to do was find some food. Once he had some food inside him, he would be fine. He slipped away down an alley before the man could take his shoulder, then doubled back round a corner into a street that was so narrow that the upper stories of the houses were almost touching. A person could climb straight from one bedroom to another on the other side of the street if they had mind to. That was when he saw the cloud of death. Not that he knew what it was then. That would come later. No. All he saw was a dark stain the size of a large dog that seemed to drift from an open window like smoke, but smoke that moved with a mind of its own, pausing for a moment and then flowing sideways to a drain pipe where it turned and slid upwards towards the roof. Hunger forgotten, Matthew watched open-mouthed as the cloud drifted over the sharp edge of the roof tiles and vanished out of sight. A scream split the silence, a scream from the open window, and Matthew turned and pelted back down the street as quickly as his malnourished legs would carry him. People didn't scream like that when they'd had a surprise. They didn't even scream like that if they'd had a shock. No, in Matthew's experience, people only screamed like that if they were in mortal fear of their life, and whatever had provoked that scream was not something he wanted to see. And that's the prologue to chapter 1 of this book. Okay, look forward to seeing you in September. Hope you have a lovely summer holidays, and it'll be me and Mr. Labrie.